one of my favourite things about Frasier, other than, the fantastic comedy, the brilliant acting, Kelsey Grammer, is the fact that it's impossible to watch just one episode. So when I watched this for the first time, I have seen it several times now, but when I watched it for the first time, I definitely watched multiple episodes straight away. So after watching the first episode, The Good Son, we go straight into Space Quest, the second episode of the first season. And as a follow-on from the first one, this is brilliant, because Frasier is starting to realise the effects of what he has agreed to. And obviously what he has agreed to is Martin living with him, but also Daphne and Eddie. And in this episode, it's all about him trying to find his own space again and trying to find some quiet time just to be alone. But things constantly keep getting on top of him. He can't go home to read, he can't go to Cafe Nervosa, obviously, workspace is obviously very limited anyway, but there is Roz and Bulldog who are constantly hounding him as well. And it's all about the frustrations. Now, Frasier being a very, I don't want to say angry, but he's a very frustrated character. And he's often very happy to show that frustration. And it just gives us some wonderful performances from Kelsey Grammer when Frasier kind of unleashes this stress. And one of my favourite scenes is where he's by the window in Cafe Nervosa trying to read, and there's just a line in that scene that I absolutely love. This episode was directed by James Burrows, who is an absolute god. I love him for bringing forward Cheers and this, and the work he did with Friends with directing. If his name is on a Frasier episode, I know it's going to be golden. But I'll be honest, most of the episodes are. It's written by Cy Duquesne and Denise Moss. And this one aired on the 23rd of September 1993. I was 1 year old. This is an absolutely fantastic episode for introducing us to other aspects. Bulldog Briscoe, played of course by Dan Butler, has his first ever outburst where he talks about things stinking and being BS, and this is the first one, and that was scary. I remember being kind of taken aback by that level of aggression. Fantastic performance, of course, by Dan Butler. Really kind of an intimidating character, but I grew to become very, very, very fond of him. And I cannot fault this episode. I think Martin is a character. There was always the chance that Martin was going to be quite irritating, because if you side with Frasier, you're going to feel how much he is on top of Frasier at the moment. But that was never the case from like the first moment. And Eddie in this is obviously amazing. Niles is only in one episode, one scene. Don't really get that much of David Hyde Pierce here, but we get enough. I'd rather have some than none. Really, obviously fantastic performances from Jane Leeves, Peri, Gilpin, and John Mahoney. The guest caller in this one is Christopher Reeve, which is pretty brilliant. Absolutely fabulous second episode. So excited about this, I can't talk. And the first time I watched this, I can't remember how many episodes I watched back to back. I think it would have been about 5 or 6. And as I said, I've seen them since. This one I watched in isolation. Watching it on its own, it's just, it's wonderful. It's interesting that Niles only appears a little bit, because he's not in the first episode that much either. And it did take us quite a bit of time for Niles to become, 100% prominent. Whereas, he got to the stage where he was basically just below Frasier in terms of being a protagonist. But in the start, I feel like he was more of a supporting character. Maybe they didn't know how much they were going to bring him into it. There was obviously a lot of thought that he was very much like Frasier when Frasier first started in Cheers. Were they going to be too much alike? No, that was never ever a problem. It's a beautiful episode, absolutely wonderful. I'd say if you haven't seen it, check it out. But I assume you've seen it. But if you haven't seen Frasier at all, for whatever reason, just watch it, please. It's perfect. I love it. It is... Now look, I love Cheers. I am a Cheers addict. But I have never laughed at a show as much as I did at Frasier. It just speaks to me in my style of comedy. It's perfect. This episode is perfect. I can't fault it.